Ladies and gentlemen, we're starting the podcast. This is Rudy Carson.
Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Rudy Carson's second obnoxious appearance on the podcast, and it's Matthew Wilkins' first episode appearance on the podcast, and we're super excited. We just grabbed a very quick lunch, the three of us, and it was going to just be me and Rudy, but we decided that it would make a lot of sense to bring Matt on. Matt's actually the one who introduced me to Rudy 3 years ago, and we've had a lot of fun times together. And we're going to chop it up about life, poker, business, relationships, and whatever else the self-proclaimed obnoxious Rudy Carson wants to talk about. And right now he's struggling to send me some pictures, which he proclaims are important to his story. And we're going to put them on the podcast feed, but right now he's having some difficulties.
No, the Wi-Fi here is weak.
He's sitting 3 feet from the router. My phone is 4 feet from the router. My phone's working perfectly, and
there you go. Look, see, it's coming. It says, but it's not working. It's not sending.
Rudy, I actually was going to ask you this the other day. He has like an iPhone 7, and I have an iPhone. I think it's a 15 now we're on. I think, Rudy, can I buy you a new iPhone? I know you're a minimalist, but that could be why the picture's not going through.
Okay, so while I'm waiting for the picture to go through, let me tell you a story. Are you familiar with the genocide in Rwanda?
I might have heard about it.
Okay, so the genocide in Rwanda was a battle between two tribes, the Hutu and the Tutsi. I once talked to Bill Clinton, who was the president well before your time. You were very young when that happened, or maybe not even born. But he was the president of the United States.
Bill Clinton?
Yeah. It's just a very...
I'm 42.
I know, but you still... Oh, yeah, maybe he was during your time. Anyway.
I think I actually was allowed to vote for him. Not only was I born, I was able to vote for him.
He said to me that that was his only regret as the president, that he did not step in the genocide in Rwanda, where 1.5 million people were killed. And it all happened in, I think, a 40-day period.
Wow.
And the genocide was so brutal that guns weren't used. They were hacking people with hatchets to death.
Jesus.
And it was family members killing family members because they were from two different tribes. Best friends. I met somebody by the name of Freddie who started this not-for-profit where they are highlighting the genocide.
Oh, wow. Right?
And his best friend came into his compound where him and his family, which included his parents, his siblings, their spouses, and their children. And his best friend walked into that compound, claiming to be helpful to him, allowed 6 other people to come in, and hacked his entire family to death in his presence. And together, him and his friend, together formed this not-for-profit so that this madness would never happen in this country again. So my wife, Sharon, who heads up the Peace Action Network, and for some reason or the other, this picture isn't going through, but you can see it. This happened 2 weeks ago. And the story I'm going to tell you is going to blow your mind. You see the woman with the red dress to her right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the smaller man to her left?
Yeah.
He murdered her husband and 6 of her 9 children with a machete and gored them to death in her presence.
When was the picture taken?
About 10 days ago.
So this is after.
This is, now I'm talking approximately 20 years after the event, maybe 18 years after the event. And what the story that she tells...
It came through. I'm looking at it on my phone now.
the story, so I can see it on the camera. So if you look at it, the woman in the red dress. So my wife is the Indian woman with the sneakers.
Yep.
That's Sharon.
Yep.
The person 2 steps to her right is the woman in the red dress.
Yeah.
And the tiny man, the shorter man with the blue coat.
Mm-hmm.
He murdered her husband and 6 of her 9 children.
Wow.
So the way Rwanda, being a small country, now remember, I grew up in Kenya, so kind of Rwanda to me is like New Mexico is to Texas.
Okay.
It's like in the same zip code, same time zone. You kind of speak similar languages. They speak a slightly different form of Swahili, which is the language I grew up in.
Okay.
And so this is fairly close to home for me,
Sure.
right? So my wife's there, and they were celebrating the National Forgiveness Day.
Okay. Oh.
And this is this lady right here who forgave this, and the whole country has gone
And she
through this.
saw the whole. She saw this man in front of her own eyes.
Hatchet. Not just
Hack.
kick.
Just
Just
dismember
using a hatchet,
10 people of her family.
Dismember of a family, like dismember them, right? Not only has she forgiven him, their children are now married to one another.
That's wild.
Does that send a shiver down your spine or what?
How's that
wild.
possible?
It boggles my mind, and now I will send you a second picture with her. I do not understand how people can forgive that way.
Did she explain or give any reason or?
She does, to the woman, they can't explain how they can forgive, but they know in order for the country to continue. I'm sending you a second picture. Tell me when you received it. I think you should have received it now because my iPhone is working.
Is it the picture of the whole group?
Yeah.
Yeah, that came through like.
Expand that picture a little bit.
Yeah.
So again, my wife is to the extreme right.
Yep.
You see the woman in the red dress there again.
In like the middle one?
In the middle one.
Yeah.
Every one of those women to the right, all the way to the non-African, the non-Rwandan, who is not black,
Okay.
that entire group of women had their husbands butchered. All of them have forgiven the perpetrators of the crime, and in 4 out of the 9 cases, they've either adopted one of the children that was left as an orphan because then somebody else killed the perpetrator during this period of madness.
Wow.
Or their children have married and they've made themselves into family. And I think and Clinton said that it was the only regret he had of his presidency.
Not intervening.
Not intervening in the genocide. It is the single largest genocide in history over the shortest period of time.
That's
how do you forgive? Like, how can those people forgive?
Now, what's the background on is there something in the religion there that puts some kind of forgiveness as like the backbone of religion? Is there something going on? Do you have a theory on how they're able to do it, or you're just baffled completely?
No, there is I don't know if you know, but your camera is on, and there's some cowboys over there.
Oh yeah, no, it's just. That's just the Apple TV.
Okay.
It's just like doing a preview. But
Okay,
can you disable it or no? Because Rudy's.
No, I'm not being distracted.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if the audience.
Yeah,
can
it's just
see it.
Apple TV. No, they can't see it.
Okay.
They can only see.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm just telling you, so you find this stuff interesting. You see how there's a red box that toggles between the camera angles. Whichever the red box is around, is that's what we call the program feed.
So I've noticed that Smokey is never on one of those. Have you deliberately kind of moved him away, or? Okay, thank you. By the way, guys, that's Smokey.
See,
Hey guys.
amazing. And
Rudy, you're classic.
I did.
You're
By
so
the way,
classic.
he got a proper introduction. Oh, he wasn't introduced as Smokey. He was introduced as Matt. But you were having your IT struggles during that moment, so I'm not surprised that you didn't hear it. And Dave, are you able to put yourself back on, or is that going to be too complicated? Because he can also be on the podcast too. He won't need to for this one, but don't do it. It doesn't matter. But just Rudy got me on like IT stuff and explaining. He wanted to know how things work. So that's how you know which is.
Yep. No, I heard it the
or
first
an
time.
easier way to look at it is whichever is in the top right
Yeah.
is what he's putting into the production, basically.
You know, I got it the first time.
Oh,
I do understand English. I know I wasn't born here, but I do understand English.
Yeah. The fact that you describe yourself as obnoxious makes it
Me very self-aware.
well. Yeah,
that's why
but
you
that's
respect me
not
so much.
No, but
Keep going. I'm just waiting.
no.
What's
What I'm
the
going to say
point?
actually has nothing to do with you.
Okay.
It actually makes me
Stop.
le-
Everything's about me. Go ahead.
it makes it a lot easier to deal with you now, knowing that you're 100% you're 100% aware that you're calling yourself obnoxious. It doesn't tilt me as much anymore. So I know
He's
it's going to be a
lying. He's
letdown for
lying.
you. No,
He's
I swear.
lying.
It's not like a big difference, but it is a difference. Like
He's
the fact that you actually are on the record as describing yourself as obnoxious, it's a pretty harsh word. So it shows a level of self-awareness that it undoes some of the tilt that it used to inflict on me. And the other night when we played, you were like peaking. You were peaking. And even
I don't even remember what I did.
you were just because you just acted like yourself.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
Slowing the game down as much as possible, talking about things that don't matter, and slowing the game. Basically, it all boils down to slowing the game down.
You take longer in decision making than anyone else on the planet. So
I'm aware that you like to say that because you think it tilts me. I know that I act quickly, so it doesn't. It's going to be
it's zero effect.
zero. Well, no, it still affects.
I don't
me,
slow the game down.
It's-
I entertain the game. The
which
players.
is slowing the game down.
So would you rather be entertained by me or a fast game? Take your pick.
I'm
Then don't-
okay with where you're at.
Oh, okay, good. I've got
I'm
the right
okay
balance.
with where you're at. I think that everyone else in the games that we play in, they seem to like your antics. I actually look around when you're like mid antics, and I'm like, are people like liking this right now? And they seem to like it, and they
love
laugh.
it. I love it.
They
I love
really
it.
like it. So even though I have to like temperament, I have to temper my like ADD and my desire to see more hands and play and get more action, because I know everyone else seems to just really be enjoying your buffoonery, that I just have to like put my interest on the back burner for the greater good of the game. And everyone seems to like it.
You remember Jay Wells in that game where I did the kings and then kind of held on and found the jack, but the two of you were in that hand?
I do remember that one.
He calls that the worst hand of his life.
I love that hand.
What, did you slow roll him?
No, we both had huge hands, and he just had some like nonsense kings, and just refused to fold for like 25,000 or something. The pot was massive. This is like almost 10 years ago.
Oh
too.
man, that's crazy.
And he would only run it once, multi times, which I think he still do.
Yeah.
Depends on
and-
his mood. Depends on his
And
mood.
me and Jason Wells are both like, dude,
Bankroll on
$20,000
table.
was a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of money at the time.
Yeah.
It still kind of is. And we're begging him to go once, and he just, nope.
Begging
I'm
him to go
begging
twice. Yeah.
And he's like, absolutely not. Nope. One time, run it. And then we run it, and he hits a Miracle River to just scoop us both.
Ooh.
And he just jumps up in joy, screaming, laughing. I'm devastated.
You can't breathe.
I just lost half
You're
my
like
net worth.
choking. Yeah.
And I can see it, but I'm still like, now looking back on it, I just enjoyed it because like, it was just funny. It was like, I'm crushed, Jason's crushed. It was the last hand of the night, I
And
think,
obnoxious
too.
Rudy's literally doing fucking cartwheels.
Rudy's got all the money in the world. It means absolutely nothing. He's jumping up in joy, screaming. I can't even breathe.
That's
My
classic.
chest
It's a
hurts.
classic Rudy story.
I'll
Fucking
never
Rudy
forget
story.
that hand, but I love that hand. That hand's great.
That's amazing.
And so Jason, we were talking about it yesterday when we were playing, and Jason mentioned that's his therapy hand. Like he needed to go into therapy because of that one hand.
That's
I'm sure a lot of people have gone to therapy after playing poker with you.
Yeah, it's like as I told her, I said, remember something. I've said this to you often. I am truly the world's worst winner. Like I celebrate like nobody else.
Why do you think that is though? Because
It's so much fun to win. at the
but
expense
you're
of
putting
others.
But I'm
I'm
to
also
change-
the world's best loser.
That's true. But do you think that do you think that entitles you? Because okay, let's this is a funny subject, poker. We're talking about poker, but for people that don't know us, we play like pretty high stakes poker, and high stakes is a relative thing. So if you're worth $1 billion, almost no poker game is going to be high stakes because it doesn't matter to you. You wipe your ass with $1 million. But if you're playing high stakes poker, you know that the money does matter, and substantially sometimes, to the people you're playing with, right? You have to acknowledge that.
When I'm playing really high stakes, like if you notice, my antics drop with the size of the game.
I definitely noticed that.
Right.
But
and that's the reason.
The reason why.
Right.
But see, this is something I've noticed about you. This is a good topic to talk about on the air. You sometimes lose track of where you're at. So you like when I've told you things about what goes on like when you're running a poker game, and I've shown you like text messages from people, and you've been completely baffled. You're like, how does these people behave like this? I was like, by the way, this happens all the time behind the scenes of a poker game, and you're like, really? And you were like shocked, and me and Matt are sitting there being like, this is like standard. Like this is going to happen 3 more times this week. So you're not aware of all the stuff that happens. And a lot of the people that are playing poker are playing with substantial sums of money for them. Like I'm talking 10 to 30% of their net worth are potentially in front of them. And you doing a dance after winning 30%. And by the way, it makes it worse because they know that it's 0.1% of your net worth, and you're so happy. So now it's a long question, but it's laying the foundation.
This is kind of how, for those of you listening,
I know
that's the way he makes decisions.
This is what it's like when it's my turn to make my decision at the poker table.
He goes
it's
on
not true.
and on. And get to the fucking point.
So anyway, you are the self-proclaimed world's worst winner, but the world's best loser. Do you know that it really, like, it does affect people the way you act?
Yes.
You're aware?
Yes.
And do you think that because you're such a graceful loser that you are entitled to act that way?
It's not an entitlement.
Okay.
I pay the price, right? Because in the moment... Okay, so the price I pay is really simply this. Everything in life has a cost to it. And sometimes the cost of my joy may be painful for somebody else. The price they're paying to sit at that poker table is a message to them that says, if you can't handle it, don't do this again. Like if you are so irresponsible so as to put 30% of your net worth on the table on this, and then you're going to get taunted, it's a real reminder. Don't do that again.
So are you thinking about that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
okay. Let me give you a very
specific
specific example. In the early days in the games, and Smokey used to remember this, right? I always walked in with red chips, a whole tray of red chips. Why do you think I did that? Everyone thought I was screwing with everybody, right?
You mean to a green chip game, basically?
Yeah.
Why would you come in with so many red chips?
Why do you think I always walked in with 500 red chips?
To tilt people? Because you don't need them? Take up space and be obnoxious?
No.
So you can tip more effectively?
If you notice, when I'm at the table, the tips double in size because of the red chips on the table.
Interesting.
People don't go breaking their fives.
Yeah.
They don't go breaking their twos. And when the dealer is at the table, their income doubles.
Oh, because you're putting a lot of reds everywhere.
He's forcing the reds into the game.
Oh, into play.
Yeah.
And
so you're pressuring people to put tip in fives?
Yes. And I don't mind that. Because the livelihood of these dealers who take a lot of abuse from these players.
Well, from people like you, they do.
Actually, they don't.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
That was a
fuck
joke.
with dealers
That was
at
a
all.
joke.
It was a poorly
It's only
timed
players.
joke.
Players get it, but dealers no.
No,
Well, 3 of us have never berated a dealer.
Yeah, I don't ever remember you.
No, and
doing
in fact, me and you both
defend dealers when they're being
defend,
berated.
or we're like if we see someone berate a dealer, we'll be like, here's $100 just because maybe it'll make you feel just a teeny bit better. Like we feel so bad for
But
you.
in that same game, did you notice one thing at the start of the game?
The other night?
When I won on quads on the last pool. Were you on that flip?
Did you give like a supersized tip?
I didn't take the winnings, right?
You gave it all to the dealer?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, you gave the pot to the dealer?
I broke it up into two. Maria got half and the dealer got half.
Amazing. No, I didn't.
So
I had a lot going on. I was trying to talk to
So
people.
basically, you set the stage, right? Like if you can afford to play this game, then the people that are serving you should be rewarded accordingly.
Yeah, I think I tip. I try, and when I tip, I think I do what it sounds like you're doing, which is like you're trying to set a good
Right, and it was
trying to lead by example.
Right. It was $2,000. I put in 200 into the hand I wanted. I pulled my 200 out, 900 apiece.
Yeah, no, that's
And so to me, so do I know that I'm doing that when I'm screwing with people? Yeah. So the ones that are who can afford it, they probably get really angry at me. But then they laugh afterwards.
the people that are playing
That can afford those losses.
Yeah, why are they getting angry at you?
Because I don't let go.
Because he keeps poking and
I
prodding.
keep poking and prodding. The celebration doesn't end right after the hand.
No,
Right.
it does
You're
not.
reminded about it like 4 hours later. You're
Like me, it's like
yeah.
I'm usually playing pretty appropriately. So like, yeah, the money matters, but like it matters for like 3 seconds. It doesn't
Right.
really matter.
But then I'll remind you about it 2 months later.
Right.
Then I'll tell you about my wife commenting on how you made
But
that
your
play.
dances still affect me a little bit because it's like so. The recency bias is like it's so fresh.
Yeah.
You hit a 1-outer and you did a dance. In fact, Smokey wasn't there, so he was screaming at me during a big hand on the river. I made like a good value river bet against this young lady that was playing with us, Vivian, and Rudy started screaming at me during the middle of a hand, a pretty big pot for the game we were playing, that my chair was off center. During a big hand, like he stood up, he's like, "You're not centered. Your chair is not centered. I've told you 6 times already. I'm not going to tell you again. I want to call the floor," like screaming buffoonery. And I had like this weird. And what I did,
He embellished a little bit.
maybe 5%. And as a result, I wanted to get back at him. So I actually slow rolled Vivian in the hand, which I've never slow rolled really anybody.
It was really funny.
And I
On
did like
purpose?
Yeah, like but it was
Slow-rolled Vivian.
I slow rolled Vivian
What sense
to get
does
back
that
at,
make?
to get back at Rudy because I know that Rudy's a very compassionate person and he's gonna be like I knew that he was gonna send him and it did. He's like, why would you torture someone else because of my behavior? And I'm like, I needed to teach you a lesson to behave and not.
And poor Vivian's gonna be like, I'm completely innocent.
And
like,
poor
why does-
Vivian was
Poor
tanking.
girl.
She took
The
like
poor
3
girl.
minutes on the river, and then she finally made a call. And I was like, "Oh, I just have the nuts." That's exactly what I did, and I turned it over, and then everyone was so mad at me, and Rudy started screaming at me even more, and it was quite funny. But it kind of had the intended effect. You kind of were like, it did hit you, like it hit you a little bit.
Not
Yeah.
at all.
You reacted.
Yeah, I
You were like,
reacted.
why would he do that?
Yeah, I asked you, like, you see, here's the thing. I hold you in such high esteem, Brent. I love you dearly, you know that. That when your behavior is so far out of the norm, when you deliberately hurt people, like it's so out of the norm for you that you shock me with that. And here you deliberately hurt this woman. And so I was shocked. That's all you saw.
Well, just for the record, I already read.
So funny.
You know it's so funny.
Yeah, because everything is an angle. Every single thing has needles attached to it. For the record, as you're not going to be surprised by this. I didn't have her number. I've already reached out to her
Yeah.
and apologized.
But the pain passed, right?
No,
She
I mean,
bled.
she's
She bled. She went to
she's
the
a
doctor.
good player.
She got a tourniquet.
She
put
already-
She's already healed, and now you're calling her up to what? Reminder of the wound again
Anyway.
after she's healed? Like, what's the point?
I don't know how much the sarcasm will come through on camera. Like, you need to know, for certain people, they'll understand like the meta
poker
game that we're
players.
playing. Well, yeah, the poker players, the guys that we play with, but Other people won't, but they'll
But
just.
I think we're doing this for the benefit of
yeah,
just
yeah.
more than the
Like
poker
there's like
players.
10 people that will absolutely pee in their pants watching this, and then everyone else will just skip to the other
They have
parts.
to know Rudy.
Yeah, they have to know
personally, and-
us and the characters and the game and how everything works. But yeah, so honestly, you kind of pushed me to do that though. I still did it. It was still my intentional act.
But just look at your words here, Brent, for a moment, right? Now you are saying you're a victim of my behavior. You pushed me to do that. See, again, that's so out of line for you. Like, why would you torment yourself that way? Like, I don't get it.
But in a weird way, it's actually good because your obnoxious behavior is getting the intended effect. It's getting people to like change their behavior and tilt people. So can you really be mad? Pretty good rebuttal.
Yeah, no. So let's turn it around, right? So if somebody knows they're obnoxious, right, and they behave obnoxiously, and they're expected to behave obnoxiously, is it then painful?
Is it what?
Then painful?
It's less painful now that, but like that's what we talked about at the beginning because you're self-describing yourself as obnoxious.
So it's kind of like a comedy act, right?
Yeah.
The comedian is expected to be funny at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah.
That's right to satire is also enshrined in by Supreme Court rulings. I mean, we're allowed to behave in a satirical manner.
Yes.
Constitutionally now.
Yeah. It gives you a much higher
bar.
It gives you much more leeway in what you're allowed to do if
Correct.
you're doing satire.
So we all have, let me rephrase that. I have my limitations. One of my limitations is I get an inordinate amount of joy of messing with people. Like
more than anyone I've ever seen.
Some people might say that's the reason you like poker so much.
Oh,
I mean,
no
it's
question.
definitely like a reason,
Live.
maybe it's like the reason.
It is the reason I play live poker.
Yeah.
It literally is the reason I play live.
Because there's some games that you play that you have no business playing, but now if you know that's the business that you have.
That's why I enjoy it so much. So I'm self-aware enough to know that when you test people in that way, when you push people in that way, you're breaking the boundaries. What inevitably happens after that?
Growth.
In what?
Or knowledge.
Knowledge, growth. But here's what happens. You become closer to that person.
You build.
Bonding.
It's the source of bonding. When you push boundaries with people and you say, I do not respect your boundary, I am going to pierce through that boundary, you have no choice but to either accept me or reject me. Once you accept me, I'm a closer friend.
Now it makes a lot more sense now.
You'll either reject me or I'll become closer to you.
Interesting.
I have no time for medium relationships or weak relationships. I only have time for strong relationships. Smokey calls me up, let's have lunch, I'll do that. It's a meaningful relationship. Has he ever put money in my pocket? No, he's taken about $1 million over 10 years through my losses.
I thought it was 1.7. Remember?
Yeah,
I owe you
over $1 million.
1.7 always.
By
in the
my
chat.
math, he's taking about $2 million from me. So,
But it's always a yes. Because it's a relationship like yours is based on love. It's not a weak relationship. It's not a medium relationship. I only participate in strong relationships. And one of the ways to get there faster is to test the boundaries.
So it's calculated.
Very much so.
Wow.
Very, very much so. It also gives me joy.
It's also a personality thing.
Oh, yeah.
But you lean into it.
Oh, lean into it very heavily. I do it in business settings. I do it at the poker table. I do it with my kids. I do it with family. I do it with my grandkids. I test them.
It's funny because I think I said this on the first episode that we did together, but we knew each other when I just was becoming a father for the first time, and you were just like mess, like, I don't know what you specifically said word for word, but you're like, mess with your kids, like play with them and like test them and like push them to the floor and like make them get up or something along those lines. So it's definitely like this thing is for you deep seated in your operating.
Because meaning doesn't happen in the middle. In the middle, it's blasé. Meaning happens at the edges.
Sure.
It's at the edges where profits are made. It's at the edges where experiences are sharper. It's at the edges where relationships are stronger. It's at the edges where you get the full texture of life. To experience life for the fullest, you don't experience it in the middle. You experience it at the edges. Now, that's a fundamental belief, which may or may not be true for everybody. But for me, it is true. It's my version of the truth. What's your version of the truth?
Well, there's lots of truth, but in regard to that, I think that's I can get behind that in a lot of ways, and being like getting used to being uncomfortable and confrontation and like dense subjects. I could see why you see like everything else is just foo-foo bullshit. So let's just cut right to the good shit. And if I have to like deal with some uncomfortable seconds or minutes, then that's like no pain, no gain, right? Like I have to go through those painful, awkward moments to get to the point where we bond and now we can communicate on a higher level.
Yeah, I'm saying let's play.
Sure.
This is my version of playing.
Right. Rough and tumble play, basically.
Rough and tumble play. We go into the mat, we wrestle, we're at the edges.
Which is what the first thing you did as soon as we got to lunch with Matt. He started doing it to you, and I let him do it to you, and I didn't come to the rescue, so to speak, but then eventually I was like, I chimed in.
Yeah, you felt the need to protect him, right?
I felt like it would be a good thing to do, and not protect him, but help him, like
help
you, just help you get your words across, because Rudy was interrogating you, which he loves to do, and me and you have had a lot of discussions, and it was like we were talking about pretty dense subject, like life, personal decisions, and me and Matt have had a lot of discussions. I knew I had a really good feeling for where his head was at. And as like an outside person that doesn't have a dog in the fight, it just felt like I could help him articulate where he was at.
Which I think he did.
So you needed the help.
I don't know if I needed it, but I think everybody could use some help with anything.
So that's interesting. You used the word help.
Right.
So he helped you out, basically.
He helped articulate what I was thinking at that point, but I was having trouble describing to you.
So when you're describing love, why do you need help, Smokey or Matt?
It's a touchy subject. It's like
Why?
it's so different to each person. To me, it's like I said earlier, it's not a top priority in my life.
Why?
Why? Because the responsibilities of life, of just working and taking care of myself and everyone else around me, is more important to me than love at the moment.
I think,
But who are the people you're taking care of?
Friends, family, coworkers.
And what do you do with your friends and family? Do you love your friends?
Yeah.
Do you love your family?
Yeah.
So what's the question?
You asked the question.
No, so I'm trying to correlate. So why isn't love? I mean, love isn't. In your answer, love existed.
It does exist, but it's. I also haven't had too much time to think and reflect on it, but it definitely exists. It's just I haven't looked at it as a top priority.
How do you define love, Brent?
it's a really good question. I think about it as accepting someone into your life and giving them a a special place that you know is going to be forever, and treating them in a way that it's like, I guess it's like unconditional love. Like that's kind of what I attribute love with. Putting them above you. It's a combination of a variety of things. It's putting their needs above you. It's thinking about them before you. It's knowing that you've like almost like a merging of identities with, well, when I think of love, I think of my wife primarily, and my children. I guess to make it short, I think it's about just making someone else more important than you. Like love, like they're like loving them like nothing else matters in the world. Like that's the most important thing. A sacrifice of everything is sacrificable except for that relationship. Like that's what love is.
So I've had texts from you where you've said, "I love you, bud."
Yeah.
Yeah. So care to describe that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in that context, what does it mean when I tell you I love you is, I think you know, but you're asking me on the air. You want me to hear me say it. But it's like I'm willing to escalate the needs of yours above basically everything else. Like you call me, you need something, done. Like if I can do it, like I'll give you emotional support. I'll give you whatever support. Like love is just putting the needs of that person so high that you're showing them that they've achieved the highest standing. Love is the highest regard you could have for somebody.
How many people do you love?
20?
If you had that standard for 20 people, do you really mean it, or is there degrees?
There's degrees.
Okay, so out of the 20 you love, what's the standard for number 20?
A little bit less than number 19.
Okay.
And then
so
all the
what
way
would
up to
you
number
do?
1.
What would you do for 19 that you wouldn't do for 20?
I don't know.
So you haven't been tested in that area
No,
yet?
of course not. It's obvious. And 20 might not even be the right number, obviously. But I tried to give you an answer of like how strongly I feel for a certain number of people in the world.
What's your idea of love? What do you think love is?
I describe it a little differently. As I mentioned over lunch, when I meet either you or you, and you watched it because I was on the phone and I stepped away because I couldn't greet you the right way. I couldn't greet you the way I would greet people I love, right? Which is 100% of me being present. I stepped away and then came back and greeted you.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain people that create a neurochemical reaction inside me that when I'm in their presence, it creates a different version of joy or affection or happiness or excitement. There is a combination of emotional reactions that go through me. And in this whole group of emotions sits under the category love. And so as I go through life, I try and enhance those relationships that create those emotions rather than the ones that don't create those emotions. So I spend less time with people that don't create those emotions inside me and more time with people that do. It's kind of really that simple.
Sure.
And that to me is love.
Got it. That's a good explanation.
That's the group I choose to surround myself with.
How many people do you love? If you could guess, it might not be so easy to just say off the top of your head.
I would say over 100. at minimum, probably 150, maybe 200. Now, a lot of my family members wouldn't fall into that category.
Would not
Yeah.
fall into that category.
So a lot of your family members, you don't love them,
Correct.
or you
Okay, but then the word family is also very clear, right? Are you talking about my children, my spouse, and my parents?
the whole.
Or are you talking the extended? Or yeah,
All blood, yeah.
Then, well, if you think about it, my wife is one of 11. So, on my mother-in-law's 100th birthday, which was 7-8 years ago, there were 93 direct descendants present. I don't even know the names of all of them.
Right, it's large.
Well, that took a serious turn. You can't help yourself.
What do you mean?
Just going deep, just assaulting Smokey's like entire life, just putting him on the spot. You love it.
Did you view that as assault?
Not at all.
Okay, so why would you choose the word assault?
Okay, that was an aggressive word, but it was definitely an interrogation.
I don't
Did you view
even.
it
I
as
don't
an
even feel like it was.
interrogation?
He likes deep, meaningful conversations.
Sure, yeah, still too harsh of a word, but it was like a very like putting you on the. It was still putting you on the spot.
I could say he put me on the spot, but I've known him for long enough to know that he enjoys deep, meaningful conversations, and he is looking to get a better understanding of who he's talking to. And through those deep, meaningful conversations is how he gets that better understanding.
Sure, and I think to some extent it's I won't say it makes me. I guess it makes me uncomfortable. Not like in a way that I want to avoid it, but it's like because I'm empathetic for him, and it kind of feels like you're like poking him, and I have to watch him like not suffer.
Squirm?
Yeah, I have to watch him squirm. So I'm like, I want to like that. Like that's why at lunch I chimed in, but I waited because there's a balancing act between wanting to help somebody, but wanting to let them have their own voice. So I don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic.
So that's a really good question for you, right? Okay, so why did you have that need to interject? You were either getting bored and you wanted to change the subject, or it wasn't relevant to you. So there's always that class, right? There's always things that happen that are not part of what you're looking for. Was it part of that? Was that what the reason?
No, I think it was more like watching, like I like Matt a lot. He's a friend. I've known him a long time, and like watching him squirm just made me uncomfortable. Like,
it was out of love. It was
out of love.
It was like
yeah.
he's trying to protect.
That's what it felt like to me.
So why would you choose to protect one person you love from the other person you love? Now, how often do you do that with your kids?
Actually, it happens a lot, and it's a very interesting thing because one kid will do one thing and then another kid will do their own thing, and you kind of have to like let them. Part of you, it's like two minds, right? Half of your mind says interject and stop the madness so they don't hurt each other, but then the other half of you says they need to play rough and tumble because that's how they're going to learn about what the threshold between what is too violent, like how does gravity work, how does pain work. But I think that's like the dichotomy of life that makes everything, the contrast. Like, do I overdo it? Do I undercorrect? Do I overcorrect? I have to find my own balance here and be okay with my decision.
Is that necessarily true?
Let
me offer a different lens.
Okay.
Every time you're helping somebody in a form of protection that you're giving them, you're actually hurting them.
100%.
Probably right.
Definitely right. Like you're trying to help them, but really you're sheltering them from what they should be going through to learn.
Right. From like, I'm taking the pain away and then the gain's gone.
So we were talking about Smokey's relationship with his current partner, whom you love dearly. And that needed to be expressed. And that needed to be expressed. Did you hurt him by stepping in the middle of him struggling with the way he needed to describe that relationship?
Potentially, yeah, I guess.
And see, when you said just now that it looked like he was assaulting me or interrogating me, I disagree with both those, because when he asks me questions like that I'm struggling to answer, when he leaves and when I leave, I go home and think about that.
Right.
And it gives me a better understanding of that question he asked me. Even if I answer the question on the spot completely wrong, I can go home and think and say, what is love?
Right.
How do I love? Who do I love? All those types of things. And it gives me a much better, maybe not at the moment, but as time goes on, I get a much better understanding of the answer to that question.
It forces you to think about stuff that you might have been like trying to bury.
So it might look like I'm struggling or I'm in an awkward position,
Yeah.
and I'm not enjoying it, but I really do enjoy those tough questions that I have trouble answering, because I go home and think about it.
That's good for me to hear, because now it's going to push me to not do that in the future, not just to him, but to anybody, my kids, my wife, you, whoever, So it's good feedback.
I enjoy, in general, just being put in awkward positions, because those awkward positions, how you maneuver and answer those questions and get in and out of those awkward positions, I feel like that helps you a lot later in life. Because if you encounter that same awkward position, now you have some experience. Now you have more insight on how to deal with it and how not to deal with it. When is that? Is that phone call in 5 minutes, or is that at 3:30?
An hour. No, it's an hour.
An hour. It was really interesting listening to you, Matt. I'm just going to keep calling you Smokey, because that's my affectionate name for you.
What do you find interesting?
How often do you have conversations with people that leave a history, that there is a tail to that? How many of those conversations happen to you on a daily basis where there is a tail? Once a week, once a day, once a month?
It's rare. It's rare.
How rare is rare?
It depends, but I have very, very good conversations with Brent about, I'd say, once or twice a week. We have like a pretty long phone call where we just talk about a million different things and our opinions and whatnot. But the conversations where people ask me questions that I don't necessarily have the answer to or know the answer, that doesn't happen very often. Which is a part of the reason why I enjoy talking to you so much, because that's probably happened, those type of conversations have happened with you more than anyone else in my life, where I've kind of learned about myself just by the questions you ask me, because I don't have all the answers to those questions, but I want to know the answers, and I continue to think about them after the conversation. But those conversations that really make me think and wonder and want to learn are rare. And sometimes I have them with my mom. Sometimes I have conversations with Brent where they really resonate with me, and I think about them for hours or days or weeks after the conversation. But there's not many people, I would say, I'm comfortable enough with to have those deep conversations. So it is quite rare to have those.
Is it you giving the permission or them taking the permission?
Probably me giving them the permission and opening up.
So why do you, if you know how valuable they are to you, why do you starve yourself by not giving more people that permission?
Probably because I have some trust issues, I would say.
I think it's human nature.
Why?
Human nature is we seek comfort, but the default is to seek the basics, seek comfort, not to put ourselves into like painful situations. Just want to have our bases covered, and that's like, to me, that's, I think it's a normal human nature thing. I think to go outside of that is like an intentional act where you have to be like, I am choosing to do something that I know is going to be like emotional or painful or really going to have to work hard, but I know I'm going to do it because it's going to be better for me in the long term. Like, I'm going to go do a workout and go lift a bunch of heavy weight for no reason. I'm not going to like build a building or anything. I'm going to just do this, and it's going to be annoying, but I know I have a framework for where it fits in. And I know if I do this 1,000 times, I'll be in really good shape. Same thing. Like if I go to therapy and I talk to this lady and she asks me all these difficult questions, I'm kind of dreading it, but I know that it's better for me in the long run. So it's not the kind of thing that most people would do. Just like, oh yeah, let's just be uncomfortable for an hour because I know it makes me better. It's kind of like pulling teeth. It's like,
are you sure about that?
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about that actually. And I think most people run away from pain continually because they just want to be comfortable.
So, but you're not most people.
I think I do it a lot.
But you're trying to get a six pack.
Of course,
you've gone through.
I might be putting myself in some situations to grow in some areas, but I'm definitely not perfect.
But so, by your own admission, you say when we chat, a lot of times you feel the pain of the questions.
When me and you chat, I feel the pain. Yeah, for sure.
So why do you voluntarily put yourself there? So
maybe I know that it's, well, it doesn't happen every time we chat, but I think that there's also, once you're used to it, like okay, so the analogy that you kind of went with, which is my biggest thing right now is fitness. I'm obsessed with it and whatever. I'm at the point now where I actually really enjoy going to the gym. I love it. I still sweat. It's annoying a little bit while I'm there, but I have a routine that I've created, and I really actually look forward to it every day. So I've gotten over the hump where that I'm able to do that and look forward to it. So I look forward to our calls when we do our calls and introspective discussions. But it doesn't mean that, it just means that I've gotten over the hump with you and I feel comfortable with you, and now it's not pain. But if I had to go like meet a new therapist or do something else that I might not be in the habit of doing, I might dread it.
Is that true for you too?
Somewhat, yes. But
it's so interesting to me.
Why I don't open up and have those deep, meaningful conversations with most people, I think personally, is because of trust. I don't want most people to know those deep, intimate things about me or problems that I'm having in my life or struggles, because I don't trust them. And I feel like that's it can be viewed as a weakness or a vulnerability. And there's not that many people who genuinely care about you.
Is that true?
I feel like that. It might not be true. It might be false. It might be true for me, but I really only want to have those conversations for the most part, especially the deep ones where I'm saying intimate details about my life. I only want to have those conversations with somebody who cares for me, who wants the best for me. Because I don't want someone's advice that doesn't have that love and care. So that's why with you, I've had those conversations with Brent, with my mom, with my grandma, and maybe a few with my dad too. But and Meatball too. I've had a lot of like very deep conversations with him. But if I don't feel like that person genuinely cares about my well-being, I don't want to discuss intimate, personal things about my life with them.
Yeah, so here's a question for both of you. When do you choose to give that? What are the conditions under which you say it's not painful with you, and I welcome those questions? And how do you add more people like that in your life? Because let me offer you a different lens, right? When we were children, we only had one mode. Because the only way we would survive was by learning. And for the first 6 years, our brains were like forming. And if we didn't learn then, we wouldn't become the functioning adults that we are today. The lens I want to offer you is that's our normal mode. And that we have trained ourselves to stop doing that. But our normal mode is to play and to learn. That we have chosen to not do that.
So it's kind of like a form of trauma, scar tissue, defensiveness, lockdown, no more
trust
learning.
issues. I'm going to stop learning. So you actually are stopping yourself from being playful.
It's a defense
Makes a lot
mechanism.
of sense, yeah.
So what has happened in your life that has stopped you from learning? Because this is all, the needles, the obnoxious behavior, the red chips on the poker table, it's all pushing, every single one is pushing the boundaries of learning. For myself as well, because it teaches me how to manage, it teaches me how to be a more effective leader, it teaches me how to communicate through actions rather than words. Where, in what mode can certain moves take place? So, as I learn these things, I'm often fascinated by why do people really deprive themselves of such a joyous experience? Like there's so much joy in that new level of awareness. And we've all experienced it. What are we really protecting ourselves from?
Let me ask you this. Do you think that your perspective is the majority, or do you think that the defensive, like, I just want to be comfortable and, like, do my habits is the majority?
Oh, I think the way you describe the latter, I don't think is more of the majority, but okay. I think it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Right? I think what I'm saying is, in areas of interest to me, which out of all the areas of interest to me, human relationships are the most interesting, because they're the least predictable, and they give me the most joy, right? I think in the last podcast I mentioned collecting objects now is just the complete
meaningless.
Like it's actually boring.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you. I went to a friend's house fairly wealthy guy. 20,000 or 25,000 square feet, and just beautiful housing. And I'll just call him, I'm trying to think of somebody with a name I don't know.
John.
I know too many Johns.
No, but yeah, just
I'm going to use the name Amir.
Amir, okay.
I don't know any Amirs, okay. Well, I do, but they're so distant that it makes no difference, right?
If you offend them, it's okay.
Yeah, they're not going to be hearing this. I said to him, Amir, because I was watching him, right? He was showing us this. I said, Amir, I know this is your new home, and I know everyone's congratulating you. I'm going to offer you my condolences. Because I can actually see and feel your pain of the magnitude of work that it takes to keep it this way. Oh, the staff you have to have, this.
Mm-hmm.
He actually teared up. He goes, you're the only person that has said that, and it's really true.
It's so funny that you said that, because I was going to ask you earlier, because do you have, I feel like the way you operate now and the way you like approach people and like life and what matters to you, I feel like there's one like trophy, like obviously like collecting watches or cars would be a lot of people's trophies, but for you, that I have an idea of what the trophies are.
Collecting people?
No.
Relationships?
No.
How many people I can screw with?
How many people you can make cry?
No.
No, I don't think that you actually, but no. But to be serious, I do think that you like, of the things that you remember, I do think that when you have an experience where someone really cries and gets like legitimately emotional with you, I think those things probably like stay with you like an inordinate amount of time.
That, I would change that to eyes watering.
Okay.
Not crying.
So,
No, big difference.
Okay.
Your eyes can water from a moment of joy,
okay.
from a moment of sadness. They can also water from a moment of excitement.
Yeah.
The moment basically from a brief, intense emotional moment. Yes, I like to collect those, because those moments are not only saved for you. Because of my relationship with you, I sympathetically endure that pain, experience that joy, appreciate the excitement, or feel the sadness. And all I do is I state it.
Because it feels like
it's a vibrational effect.
It's like
it's an awareness.
It is like in a sense, it's like a trophy, because it's like it represents that feeling that you're going for of like really deep connection and like touching their soul or that sixth sense. Like it can't be faked. Like that's like whatever you got somewhere. Like you talked, you asked the right questions and you made them really feel something serious, and then it's just kind of like it's proof pudding.
Yeah, I think from my lens, the word trophy belittles the moment.
It does.
It's a memory. So I'm in the business of collecting memories.
Sure.
And those memories, when experienced, every memory that's created enhances the relationship. So remember I was talking about the edges earlier on? That's what I was referring to. The relationships are created at the edges, and the memories are what keeps them continue to grow.
You remember our meeting in Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
It was a memory.
Yeah, it was a real one. That was like when I was at my low.
Yes.
And we had like a 2-hour meeting in Starbucks, even though you were super busy and you had like a million things going on. And I cried a little bit.
Yeah, it was a memory, right? But what I think most people don't realize is they think that the tears are a sign of vulnerability, whether it's joyous or sadness, from my perspective, it is the ultimate honor they can give me, because in my presence, they're open and vulnerable enough to show how they really feel. So the biggest honor somebody can give me is watching their eyes water, because they are natural with me.
Right, which is why I brought it up,
Yeah.
because it seems like a natural, like...
So it's really bestowing an honor on a person. When you... I think Dune said this in the second movie of Dune, right? In the planet Arrakis, which is very dry. You don't cry. You never shed a tear, even for the dead. You never honor anyone that much. That no individual is worth a single drop of your moisture, because water is life-sustaining.
Mm.
So every time water departs you, your life is shortened or shrunken. So no human deserves one drop of your water. And when you tear up, you're giving up that water, because you can never pull it back in. But I view it differently. When you tear up, you're paying homage to that relationship, whether it's honoring the person that died or the moment that experience took place in. Whatever that might be, it's a form of honor.
Yeah. And it's something to look back on and grow from, and to be used as fuel for...
Yeah, I call them tears because they don't necessarily... Western society, to a great extent, uses the term breaking down to mean when you start crying.
Sure.
I think of it differently. I don't think of it as breaking down. I think of it as opening up. Mm-hmm. So you only honor those in whose presence...
That makes sense. A lot of sense.
That you choose to honor by opening up.
And you're being honest. You're showing your true emotions and self at that point.
And at that moment, you are the strongest.
When it feels like it might be the weakest.
But actually, you're at the strongest, because at that point in time, you can't be hurt anymore.
I was going to say, because you're like a person with nothing to lose. It's like, you've already seen me cry, break down, open up. Then it's like...
You've seen me open up.
What else? I'm not scared of anything now.
So the more vulnerable moments I can have, I won't speak for you, the more vulnerable moments I can have, the stronger I am.
Do you think that's why the that's something where the psychedelics are at, because it's allowing you to have like the no ego environment, which we could talk about that a lot. I want to hear about that. But is that kind of where the psychedelics basically let you be the inner child and just say what's on your mind and just let it all out? And then you just, every time you do one of those experiences, you shed a layer of skin and you just become more in touch with that like spiritual being inside of you, or the sixth sense like you talked about? Is that kind of the essence of why psychedelics are working so well for people?
I can't. Have you done psychedelics?
I haven't. I had a consultation to start with ketamine, but I've been investigating it.
So
ketamine's not a psychedelic, is it?
It's a borderline. It's a borderline one.
Have you done psychedelics?
Yeah, a bunch. Mushrooms.
What's the heaviest dose you've taken? I know there's different strains, but...
Heavy. Like seeing things.
Like double digit heavy? Like 10 grams or more? Or 5,
No,
7?
never 10 grams. Probably maybe like... For me, it was heavy, but probably like close to 2.5, 3 grams.
So I do 7, 8 grams.
Oh. So you're really heavy.
I'm heavy. Shall we take a bathroom break?
Let's take a bathroom break. Yeah. So we were talking about like psychedelics, which I do want to get into with you. You have a busy day because you're a very busy man. We only have about 20 minutes left. I don't really want to do psychedelics right now, but I do want to ask you about, selfishly, I want to ask you about the podcast as like not necessarily as a business, but I'm doing it without much intention right now, just because I have a like an internal yearning to do the podcasts, and I love doing them. But every time I talk to you, you like to grill me, which is great. And I want to just kind of talk about with you and Smokey, what do you think I should be doing with the podcast? Like, what kind of decisions should I be making? What kind of promotion should I be doing? How should I be getting guests? What makes me a good podcaster? What should I be leaning into? Like, just give me your honest opinion on like what we're doing here and where I should go.
Well, the first thing that occurred to me is you're treating me like a child, right? Because when you're talking to your kids, you refer to your wife as mom.
Okay.
Am I correct?
Mommy, yeah.
Yeah. What does mommy say? So you call Matt, but in front of me you call him Smokey. So you're treating me like your child. But beyond that,
I didn't know. I got lost in we talked about this. We talked about it on the air. I got lost between serious Rudy and obnoxious Rudy, and I got stuck in no man's land. I didn't know whether to be ready for a joke or to be analytical. So still don't know.
So once I'd gone past that insult, which maybe not an insult. Actually, it's a compliment, right? Because you're treating me like your child. So I'm playful and I'm inexperienced and immature and wanting to learn, and all those things are really good.
And obnoxious.
Which
everyone knows little boys are obnoxious.
Yeah, little boys are obnoxious. In the pathway of your life, how important is intentionality to you?
Not that important.
And why is that?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I have a good enough understanding of that word and like overall. I've heard that word used a lot, and people seem to put a lot of stock into like living an intentional life. But the reason that I don't think that it's that important is being intentional. To me, it carries like a connotation of like being calculated, like overthinking things and like really trying to optimize, versus I like to live my life more from like an emotional perspective, which is like I don't need to like have a script of questions to ask Rudy. Like, I love Rudy. We have a really good relationship. We have good conversations. I'm going to just sit down and have a conversation with him, and I'll have like maybe like 2 bullet points of things that I want to talk about. So to answer your question, that's what I thought of when I was thinking about how intentional am I. And sorry, to also, you asked me this before, like, what am I trying to do with the podcast and like what's my monetization plan or anything? And I was like, I haven't thought about that yet at all. I think that I love doing it. I love having deep conversations with people. And that's all I've thought about so far. Like, nothing past that. Like, I don't care if this thing doesn't monetize ever, or certainly doesn't monetize for a long time.
So that's your intention, right?
I guess lack of intention is still an intention.
No, there's a high degree of intentionality, right? Because if you narrow the scope of the word intentionality to mean being very calculating for your benefit, and expand it as saying intentionality is to bring joy into my life, whether it be to creating through my activities, creating money, or the time I spend with my kids, that's all intentionality. So the first thing I would encourage you to think about is your definition of intentionality. Because anytime you pick a word with a narrower meaning, you're not being yourself. Because you're an open, broad-minded person, you're not very judgmental. Why did you choose to be judgmental on the word intentionality? Right? Anytime you act out of what I consider character, just ask yourself the question. Because if I see you, you're exceptionally caring, you're exceptionally kind, and you're exceptionally compassionate. That doesn't mean you're not firm. That doesn't mean you don't do the best by you and your family. Those words are not antonyms of being kind and compassionate and loving and caring. So take that strength and say, how do I expand it in this hour and a half that I'm spending with this person? So start at that point. Now, the size of the podcast is kind of small right now. You probably have listeners in the hundreds, not the thousands or the tens of thousands. So is your intent to expand it? And if so, why? Or is your intention that it'll grow organically based on the quality of the conversations that you have here? Do you have intentionality to spread distribution based on the people who come on the podcast? So those are the things I would start to think about, which is start in a business, you always start with the customer.
Mm-hmm.
The voice of the customer is arguably the most important voice in the room. Because in a business, there is literally only 3 ways to get money. Customer pays you for your offering, whether it be a product or a service. You sell a portion of your company, you call them investors, or you borrow. For the value of a podcast, scale may or may not matter due to the fact that the community you're trying to build might be built on quality of the listeners. How deeply do they listen to the conversations rather than how many listeners you have? Now, obviously, the ideal is you have someone like Rogan, millions of customers or listeners, all of whom are listening very intently.
Mm-hmm.
But those are very few outlier examples. And a lot of times people like to look at the outlier examples to direct their own actions. I'm not sure it's generally a smart idea, because outlier people tend to operate at altitudes that normal humans can't survive in. They can suck in rarefied atmosphere, like a Jobs or a Musk,
Mm-hmm.
and their capacity to think and absorb is just so far. It's incomprehensible to the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
So your better bet is to think about the intentionality. What's more important, number of listeners or depth of the way they listen? So I would start with, out of all the people who have listened to a full podcast, did they listen to a second full podcast? Did they listen to a third full podcast? So start at that very basic level. What is it that they got? And what made them come back for more? Now, in most situations, it's a quality of the individual. Most situations regarding podcasts, it's a quality of the podcaster and the guest or guests,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do you get highly interesting guests who are interested in the time they're here? So you got to meet both pieces of the equation. An interesting guest that comes in and basically talks about nothing. Okay, so you brought a famous name. Doesn't mean anything.
Right.
If you didn't get any insight that you can't read in the other podcasts that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that, it's the quality of the questions. Fundamentally, meaningful conversations are not driven by the guest, they're driven by the podcaster. So what's the questions you can ask that elicit that information? So the way you're exceptional at what I call first degree questions, which is questions where you either know the answer or can guess at the answer. Because your training as an attorney would really strengthen that part of your skills. And I've seen it. I've seen evidence of that, that you do ask exceptional first layer questions. It's well embedded in you. A lot of people don't have that basic skill, but you do. You have it in, I'd say, exceptionally well developed. The second layer questions are, if I ask this first question, I think I know the answer to it. What question does that ensue? And let me jump to the second question right away, as opposed to asking the first question. So you're going with a certain assumption in your mind, which you can state as part of the question, and then ask the question, which I've seen you do very well as well. What's the third level? When you're asking a question that they themselves haven't thought of, and how do you get yourself there? So if you can develop that skill, which I've seen you do not that frequently, but I've seen you do it. And you did it on this podcast as well, right? As you approach the idea of the word obnoxious, you almost broached it by saying, well, obnoxious is really a negative word. Have you ever thought about the impact on someone who thinks you're obnoxious? And is that helpful in your journey of developing meaningful relationships? However, when you were using the word obnoxious during the podcast, you were using it more in a playful manner. You didn't cross the realm into saying, this is a highly negative word. Why do you celebrate that label? Now, I naturally went in and explained to you what I was doing. But if the question had opened by saying, you celebrate the word obnoxious, help me understand why, I might have said, oh, I've never heard that question put that way before, as opposed to the gentle path we took towards getting that answer. So what could have been what was about a 6 or 7 minute spiel could have been knocked into 3 minutes. And that's where the intentionality comes in, which is what's the third level questions that you have the skill to get to? What's the training you need to put yourself into to operate at that level on a constant basis during a podcast?
You know, it's amazing. I don't know if you're thinking what I'm thinking. Sometimes you are, not always. But what I'm thinking is that the third level of questioning, like the real breakthrough, which is what you like, where you love to be at. If you think about where we talked about with Matt earlier, my natural disposition would be to avoid that, because there's a period of at least maybe a few seconds and maybe a minute where the interviewee, the guest, has to be caught off guard. If I'm doing my job, which is, like you said, they've never thought about this question before, right? So when I ask somebody a question they've never thought about before, by definition, it's something novel that they're going to have to reach into their brain and actually, they can't just use autopilot to answer. They're going to have to work hard to come up with something. Maybe it's uncomfortable or maybe it's not uncomfortable, but it's going to require a different level of effort and emotion. So having this conversation with you has made me realize that instead of shying away from that to making the guest feel comfortable, I have to intentionally search out, okay, what makes this guest really unique? What are the kind of questions that people want to know? What are they going to be begging that I hope he asked this? Like, what could I ask this guest that he's never been asked before, that he has never even thought of before? So I have to intentionally maybe watch prior podcasts and put myself in the position of the viewer and say, oh, he's talking a lot about this, but I wish the podcaster would ask him XYZ. So I have to really think about that.
Right. So don't conflate what you think the audience wishes to hear. Because, I mean, you hear this often. Jobs has said this, Ford has said this. The customers don't really know what they want. I'm going to take you into a zone that you didn't even think of existed. Because they don't know what they don't know. The viewer or the listener is not even thinking about that. So if you say, oh, let me put myself in the position of this listener to see what question they would ask, you'll never get there that way. Because they don't have your skills and the connectivity of the moment to even get there. So one of the questions you need to ask yourself is, what do I need to stop doing during a podcast? I'm going to stop making the guest feel comfortable. I'm going to make sure they have their water, their comfortable chair, that they don't have any level, basic health and welfare needs. But other than that, I'm going to stop thinking about comfort, which means I got to train myself to stop thinking about one of my needs to make someone comfortable. So I'm going to have to break out of my zone of comfort to enter into a zone. So if the three things that you're going to stop doing are what in a podcast? 1, making the guest feel uncomfortable. 2, making sure you're never in a battle of ego with the guest. Because if there's anything, unless it meets the need, where you can say to the guest, you're not smart enough, why did I have to point it out to you? So you're challenging. You're really pushing the boundary. Unless you're there, which is not really a battle of ego, but it's pushing that individual to go into an area that they haven't examined or searched for before. Okay? What's the third thing you're going to stop doing? Stop being lazy. By that I mean, let's take the word fuck or fucking. Okay? It can mean a whole bunch of different things. But every time you use that word, it's a sign of intellectual laziness. You can't think of a better word to put in its place because it has so many meanings. It's become the go-to word in society. So I'm going to stop using 5 go-to words. I'm going to stop using fucking. I'm going to stop using the word interesting, which is another go-to word that everyone uses when they don't really understand what they mean. Pick your other 3. Those 2 words are well established in the U.S. culture today that are overused and have no meaning. Find the other 3 words that you use that are meaningless to you, and so I'm going to stop using those 5 words. So now I'm training myself to be stopping myself from being intellectually lazy. That in the moment of the podcast, there's a high degree of intentionality. So that's what I would do from your perspective.
What do you think about how to grow the podcast, how to grow the scale? What would you do if you were me?
Grow by what? Interested listeners or scale of listeners?
I think they're very closely related.
Nah, you can get scale, but you might not get
Depth.
So
I think my natural inclination would be to start with scale and then work on depth.
okay.
Maybe.
Well, you're having a lot of fun with the artistic nature of creating many levels of content, which is meeting your artistic need. I don't know the business well enough to say how do I get scale in this business. But what I have learned is A/B testing beats nothing. I mean, nothing beats A/B testing, which is this podcast is small enough that you can experiment with literally anything.
Sure.
Other than possibly nudity, everything else is probably a go. Now, the one thing you really want to also keep in mind is if it ever becomes big, what would you have regretted from some of the earlier podcasts, right? So there might be some boundaries that you don't wish to cross, but other than that, scale is often the result of serendipity. How many different attempts at serendipity have you had? So, I mean, the obvious ones are every guest has their followers.
Right.
Can you spread it to their followers? Whatever social media platform they use. Serve it in consumable form for them so that they can pass it on. You're making their lives easier. Most things that I've seen successful are if you can get yourself like 20 or 25 fans of the podcast, identify who those 20 to 25 fans are. So how many podcasts have you done like right now? 4, 5?
No,
10?
like 10.
10. Do you know anyone that's heard all 10?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Okay. Anyone that's heard 2 or more?
Yeah.
Okay. Go talk to them.
Okay.
They're the beginnings of your fan base. Go to your fanatical supporters. Those fanatical supporters will give you the answer.
Okay.
They're the best person to ask.
Love that. You have your call.
Yeah.
Any final words?
Yeah, this is always fun. Let me know whenever I'm in town if you want to chat. And I think, I mean, you know this, and both of you know this quite well, but I place a lot of emphasis on quality of relationships. if I spend time with you, it means I have a tremendous amount of respect and I love you dearly. So just understand that. Like, I have a lot of time for you. So, and a lot of it stems from, and I think this is true, I know it's true with both of you, that you have an outlier view on humanity, even though you play poker, which is a zero-sum game.
I have a really good last thought. It's going to be the last thing. No one's going to be able to respond to it. It's going to be good.
Okay.
Do you think the reason that you like both of us and that we like you so much is because both of us don't really have like good relationships with our dads? Fucking, that's a good one to end on.
I was thinking about that on the way over here.
Were you? I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Anyway, I don't want you to be late for your call, but I want to talk to you about something for like 5 minutes, if you have time, before me and you privately about something before you leave, or we can do it on the phone later.
Okay.
But go knock your call out, whatever.
I'll go knock my call out. I have another one at 4, so if this one gets knocked out early,
You want to just do your call on the road then?
I won't be able to make it to the car in 3 minutes, will I?
Oh. Yeah, you will if you go right now, because then you'll avoid traffic. So go.